Japanese Pokemon card stores are unlike any other. The sleek interior, the organized layout, and the walls of cards spanning decades of history make them some of the best in the world. But that appeal has attracted thousands of collectors to Japan, driving card prices up across main cities Tokyo and Osaka. Enter the city of Nagoya, a beautiful area with its own district filled with Pokemon card stores. So on this trip, I visited every store in Osu, Nagoya to find out if Japan's Pokemon card bargains have been hidden here all along. Just like in Osaka, I'll be ranking each store under two categories. Prices, so whether they've got solid deals, cards priced at market, or if they're selling at a tourist premium. And variety, because while we love the modern cards releasing now, vintage cards keep things interesting, especially across the last 25 years. The lower the prices and the bigger the range, the better the rating. And of course, any store with Tomokazu Komiya, Koki Saito, and Atsuko Nishida cards gets a bonus because they're the targets for my artist binders. Nagoya can be neatly split into two. Osu, the main area, has over 20 card stores, and I think you'll spend most of your time here. And then the Nagoya Station area, which has a few stores worth checking out and a few stores you can skip. We're gonna start at Nagoya Station and then move to Osu because there is a lot to cover there. And because I wanted to start with a chain that has awesome stores no matter which city you're in, C-Labo. If you come across a C-Labo in Japan, chances are it's stacked, and this one was no exception. While their ultra modern range was strong, if you're anything like me, you're gonna want to jump straight to the vintage cards. They had a huge assortment here, everything from Pikachu promos to old backs, with high-end items like this Crystal Ho and misprint Kairiki Charizard Holo. This is an error card where the description for Charizard actually has the details for Machamp, or in Japanese, Kairiki. It was a decent 1,350 if you had that sort of money. For me, this is what Japanese Pokemon card shopping is all about. You'd randomly find gems tempting you, like this Hajime Kusujima Mew, or this theater promo Latias by Mitsuhide Arita. As a Pikachu collector, this sort was perfect, though it's slowly getting tougher and more expensive. Their art rare display was stacked and priced pretty fairly, and they even had a display of expanded cards for all the GLC fans out there. Like I mentioned before, Ultra Modern had a massive representation here. Everything from the Scarlet and Violet era was on full display, from Chase Full Art Trainers to Shiny Treasure EX Special Art Rares. There were a lot of yellow sticker cards here too. Some were marked down due to damage and others were simply on sale. The Scarlet Violet stuff was priced pretty close to market, so no major complaints there. But the Sword and Shield and Sun and Moon cards had some wild pricing. It was mainly these Eevee Heroes special arts. This Vaporeon was randomly $165. Possibly just an old price tag that needed an update, because mixed between the overpriced cards were other special arts that seemed about right. I still need that Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX, man. The Sun and Moon cards that were on display were a nice trip down memory lane. This Gengar and Mimikyu GX at $300 was honestly a good deal looking back. And the Dream League Clefairy promos were crazy. I still can't believe this card is over $250. It was a free promo. There were a ton of full art trainer cards here too, mostly from the Sun and Moon block, but some Sword and Shield cards as well. But the pricing generally was pretty volatile. Just take a look at those Cynthia. And if you're into XY and black and white, they had a modest range with some choice picks. This ultra rare Mewtwo EX was pretty cool, and they had a few mega cards mixed with some plasma full arts too. As far as first stops go, this one is elite, earning an easy 4 stars for variety, weirdly very few E-Series cards, and 3.5 stars for prices. Sadly, no major bargains. The next block has 4 stores, which we want to visit all at once. So it's best to head 2 blocks over to a store run by a lover of Pokemon cards, TCG Shop 193. TCG Shop 193 has a huge range of ultra modern through to modern cards. Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield, and Scarlet and Violet have very healthy representation. And the layout's clean, with full art trainers grouped together, special arts in their own cabinet. They've even got a bunch of old energy cards, which can get crazy expensive. $30 for just one energy card is insane, but that is the cost of a bling deck. Unlike C-Labo, 193 had a nice range of sealed product. Everything from booster boxes, starter decks, and special sets. Scarlet Violet boxes are still being reprinted, so tread carefully there. But the out-of-print booster boxes, like Eevee Heroes and Blue Sky Stream, were actually priced just a bit under market, which is always nice. There were a bunch of sleeves here, and then a $15,000 trophy card hidden in between them. And some cool stuff like this Trainers magazine. Volume 13 had the promo Celebi and Bill's maintenance inside. Honestly, an underrated pickup. The Southern Islands collections here were the first I'd seen all trip, and they were priced really well. Not often you see them for $30 sealed. Even though the modern cards had a way to fall, almost every trainer here was cheaper than anywhere I'd seen prior. covering as far back as XY with cards like Skylar on the shelf. I'm still missing this Mallow, but I couldn't bring myself to spend $300. They had a decent selection of special arts with the usual modern suspects on display, and even though the Sun and Moon selection wasn't very deep, what they had was cheaper than market, both the ADP and the Magikarp and Wailord. It was nice to see some VMAX Climax cards at extremely tempting prices too. The vintage selection was very sparse, with mostly random cards and very little cohesion, mainly because all the vintage cards were in a sister store a few train stops away, but we'll get to that later. That means it's going to be 3 stars for variety, mostly modern, but a solid range of sealed, and 4.5 stars for prices, because almost everything was just under market. Like those Southern Island postcards, I ended up picking up all of them because they were just too good of a deal. Okay, time to head back to that block with the 4 stores that you want to sweep as quickly as possible before heading to the main event in Osu. First is Meta Games, which is a player-focused store with nothing major for collectors. Then you've got Toreka Champion, a store focusing primarily on Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic. Hobby Station, which was surprisingly decent and where I bought my first card in Nagoya, the Gardevoir EX SAR by Kuroi Mori for just $45. And probably the biggest letdown of the trip, Dragon Star, who normally let you film but strictly prohibited it this time, which was probably due to their wildly high prices. I got asked a lot about mystery cubes in the last video and I actually picked one up here. While it didn't have anything crazy inside, it had a lot of cards for my artist binders, so that was pretty cool. With the main station area cleared, it's time to head to Osu, the heart of Pokemon cards in Nagoya. There are over 20 stores here to get to, close to the scale of Nipponbashi in Osaka. And if you know where to look, you can find some serious pickups. Our first stop in Osu is the sister store of TCG Shop 193, also one of the few stores in the area that buys from tourists. Unlike the Nagoya Ekimae store, this one had a ton of vintage cards on display, instantly making it a must visit. There were way more modern cards here as well, though the prices were a little bit higher. That's despite there being more yellow sticker cards that are reduced due to damage or on clearance. I couldn't spot any clear bargains, and that's probably because we're in the tourist area now. Not every store in Nagoya carries a tourist tax, but there are some taking advantage of the West's surging interest in Japanese cards. They had plenty of Master Balls, but all around the 1500 yen mark, likely to have fallen hard since the 151 reprint. It was the vintage selection that kept you browsing here though. And it was nice to see some E-Series and Diamond Pearl Platinum cards, though almost all of them had yellow stickers, so you're up against mostly damaged cards. This Togekiss by Kagemaru Himeno looked like a steal for just $13, and I don't know why I didn't just buy it at this point. Looking back, this was the first store that had card-ass cards on display. The prices seemed fair, but it's not a collection that I'm into. The range here was all around the $10 to $50 mark, making it a great stop if you're trying to build up an artist or Pokedex collection. And there's a ton of variety with Vending series cards too. I love that Growlithe by Komiya. They even had half deck cards and some of the original Japanese promos. This Oyama's Executor for $105 would have been a great buy, but only if it was mint. PSA 10 copies sell for $550 online. They had a few EX cards from the Ruby Sapphire days, though nowhere near as many as the selection back at B in Osaka, and a few really clean evolutions from the HeartGold SoulSilver era hidden at the back. They had an okay sealed collection, made interesting by some standout items like the Eevee Heroes Gym set, the Tag Team Premium Trainer Box, and the Flareon, Vaporeon, and Jolteon Summer promos, which sell for nearly $10,000. One of the best parts of this store is that they buy stuff from tourists, as evidenced by all the TCG mats for sale, probably all from last year's Worlds. It's a solid 3.5 for variety and 3.5 for prices. TCG Shop 193 is a great first stop in Osu, but the best is yet to come. Because when you head north just one block, you'll approach Surugaya, Nagoya, Osu, Toreka. If you've ever been to Japan, chances are you've seen the Surugaya. They're a chain secondhand goods store with locations all through Japan, but being a used goods store means most of what they sell has a level of wear and tear to it, and this Surugaya was no exception. But that's part of the game. This store had 2 aisles, with one dedicated to bulk boxes if you're into that, and the other lined with cabinets, sorting cards into energy type. Old cards in good condition are tough to find over 20 years later, so if you've got the time to spare, it's well spent in Surugaya sifting through the plethora of vintage cards they've got to see if you can find a deal. And those deals aren't limited to just vintage. Modern had a decent offering too, with this Vaporeon V Special Art priced nicely at $60. This, coupled with the low prices, makes it a destination for collectors trying to fill up an artist binder. If you're not fussed on condition, chances are you'll spend a chunk of your budget here. Cards that would normally be really expensive have discounts due to some slight whitening along the edges or a crease you can only notice from the back. And in extreme cases, those cards become dirt cheap, like this Vulpix McDonald's promo for just $5. And nearly every era is on display here. It's organized chaos, but it's kind of fun because you can't tell what you'll find next. These theater Theater VS promos were bargains at $6 and $12 each. A Southern Islands Ivysaur at just $4, perfect for a binder. This Japan exclusive War Turtle for $14, found only in the intro pack Squirtle deck. I'm spewing I didn't notice that at the time. And one of the best Slowking cards ever by Tomokazu Komiya for just $7. The most popular Pokemon were front and center in each cabinet, so this Surugaya knew what they were doing. But that wasn't a bad thing. Everything felt pretty nicely priced in here considering how old the cards were. Modern cards had a decent offering too. There was a cabinet filled with full art supporters and no shortage of special arts or art rares either. Some with very good prices, like the beautiful Shinjikan the Magikarp for just $14. And while they didn't have any sealed, they did have a few premiere cards that didn't belong with the rest. Worth a look, but nothing truly stand out, aside from this Lily for $3,200 and the Umbreon VMAX special art for $1,700. I still always like looking at these cabinets, either to catch some cool history or to remind myself how expensive some of these cards have gotten over the years, as well as how rapidly others can drop. Despite bookmarking a ton of cards here, I held back again just because there were so many more stores to visit. Surugaya earns a very solid 4 for variety and 3.5 for prices. Everything priced about where it should be. This is where Nagoya starts to heat up. On the next corner is possibly one of the best card stores in Japan, with enough cards to function as a Pokemon card museum, Toreka Camp. Even though it's a relatively tiny store, Toreka Camp manages to cram in cards and sealed items from every generation over the last 28 years, focusing exclusively on Pokemon. There's a solid variety of old back cards here, with a few no rarity cards to kick things off, plenty of base set holos, as well as jungle and fossil favorites, leading into Team Rocket and Gym Heroes. And throughout this cabinet, you'll see a few rare starter deck holos, like this Holo Scyther, as well as early promo cards like the Korokoro Mew, until eventually you end up in the Neo era, one of my personal favorites, and that's where the prices start to ramp up too. Though this light Arcanine for $60 seemed like a decent deal. There's a stack of E-Series cards here with a good selection of commons and uncommons, perfect for the artist binder collectors out there, and one of the best selections of VS cards I'd seen on the trip so far. The prices were all around market, so not as good as that one store in Osaka where I grabbed Suicune for just $35. It's really one of the best eras for Pokemon cards, especially when you include the amount of Japan exclusive promo cards released back then, mostly as trainer magazine extras. Where Toreka Camp really shines though is with their extremely deep selection of advanced through to HeartGold, SoulSilver era cards. It is extensive to a wild degree, not just a few cards here and there. It is drastically bigger than the vintage selection. Plenty of common and uncommon cards here too, though I will say this, if you look hard enough through Japan's card stores, you'll start finding cards like these for $1 to $5, which is what happened a little bit later on. There's a very deep selection of Delta species cards, until eventually you reach the Diamond Pearl Platinum era, a cabinet full of both regular holo rares and the revolutionary EX and LVX cards. This Rayquaza, easily the standout here. There's a cabinet devoted entirely to HeartGold, SoulSilver cards, everything from regular illustrations through to the timeless holo rares. Just the 2 Legends cards this time round, but a solid selection of Prime cards. And then you reach the Black, White, XY, and Sun and Moon era cabinets. There's significantly fewer regular artworks here, maybe because the interest from collectors isn't there right now, but those cards do exist, so it's mostly secret rares from main sets and concept packs. No complaints though, because it's tough to find this many secret rares in one spot that are also in solid condition. It's hard to focus on just one part of their Sun and Moon cabinet. Special arts from main sets are here, as well as GX Tag Team All-Stars. And there's no shortage of full art trainer cards either. I know a few collectors who'd go crazy in here. The Sword and Shield cabinet focused primarily on the chase special arts from sets like Eevee Heroes and Lost Abyss, with marquee cards like the Giratina V and Umbreon VMAX special art commanding some of the highest prices. And they had a decent amount of full art supporters, all of which have come way down in price since their 2023 highs. Toreka Camp has a solid selection of modern cards too, but with so much modern across Japan, I was way more interested in the deep history filling these shelves. If you're into PSA slabs, they had plenty on sale, though they don't come cheap. And what you're seeing here is just what's in their cabinet. There's way more behind the counter. There's a cabinet dedicated to high-end items with some very premium promo cards on display. And there's a solid sealed collection too. It's a mix between booster boxes from the last 3 eras, as well as some more exclusive stuff, like this HeartGold collection booster box for a casual $9,000, as well as some starter decks and booster pack collections. Speaking of booster packs, there's a cabinet with a wicked display of sealed packs. That's something you're into, like my good mate Pokioki. Toreka Camp is huge, and I only covered a fraction of what's on sale here, so it's an easy 5 stars for variety and 4 stars for prices. A must visit even if you're just passing through Nagoya, especially if you're building an artist binder. I grabbed this Tyranitar by Corki Saito and Raichu for just 20 USD, as well as this Lickitung and Starmie by Masakazu Fukuda. Since filming, Torokar Camp has relocated a few blocks down the road, making this video a chapter in time. But I'm excited to see what their new store looks like, so if you visit it, let me know. Heading east from here brings you to a strip with a few stores close together, and if you've been to Osaka, there's one here that you might already be familiar with. B has stores across Japan, and with their Osaka branch being one of the best, my expectations in Nagoya were high. They've got a great mix of modern cards, promos, sealed items, and vintage cards, though with some questionable prices. Plus a decent yellow sticker range that was a little more palatable. The first thing you'll notice walking in is their huge sealed range. They've got most Scarlet Violet booster boxes here just around or below market price, with the older stuff like Dream League and Sun and Moon boxes commanding a way higher price. And while most stores have just a few on shelves, B had a fair amount of stock, especially for V-Star Universe at just $66 a box. You can skip past the modern offering here because the prices are high. This Special Art Charizard EX was the highest I'd seen in any stores so far, so you're much better off heading straight to the vintage cabinets. And this B has plenty, laid out in some very sleek displays. Lots to choose from, but with the store well aware of each card's popularity, so the prices are on the higher end across the board. Especially for Pokemon like Charizard, who commanded the most real estate. Second only to Pikachu, who had an entire section dedicated to their regular cards and promo cards. Having said that, I never get tired of stuff like the Espeon by Atsuko Nishida and these Eevee by Kagemaru Himeno. The back of the store had another 4 cabinets filled with a mix of modern cards, TCG playables, and some more vintage. The modern offering was much the same, a combination of art rares and baby shinies, while the vintage covered some E-Series cards, a few VS holos which were priced about where you'd expect, these underrated promos from the Trainer magazine, a beautiful Hajime Kusajima Celebi, as well as some Diamond Pearl Platinum holos, though there weren't any major standouts. The Legends cards on full display is always a treat to see laid out, and the prices honestly weren't half bad. Speaking of prices, the yellow sticker cards on sale were actually decent, though you definitely want to condition check these before committing to buy. B Honpo in Nagoya isn't as good as their Osaka branch, but still definitely worth a visit. The variety isn't fully fleshed out, so it's a 3 stars there, and the prices are a bit intense, so it's another 3 stars there too. Just kind of wish these jumbo cards on display were for sale, cause they're pretty hard to come by. Like I was saying earlier, this strip has a few stores bunched together. Full Comp, which is mostly a store for modern and playable cards. Torokar Champion, again, mostly modern, so more of the same. And if you're into retro games, they had a Super Potato too, but for some reason I didn't go into it. What I didn't regret was walking into this store, which had the greatest display of Diamond Pearl Platinum cards I'd ever seen. Wonder Liz 2. For me, this store was an absolute dream come true. With my collection focusing mostly on 2003 and 2012 era cards, Wonder Liz 2 had the biggest display of any store so far, with cards in really good condition. And because I really want to focus on the vintage, let's cover their modern quickly. All the recent Scarlet Violet sets were here, with pricing generally around market. Lots of playables, like those old school energy cards, and the flashy full art supporters and special arts were all priced relatively fairly. There were some high-end Sun and Moon cards here and there, mixed with V-Star Universe chasers, but nothing standout. And the most popular full art supporters from the last 5 years were here too, again with some solid prices, especially that Shield Money for $340. The modern offering was fair, but you're not visiting here for the modern. You were visiting for the cabinet at the back of the store, filled with just about every Diamond, Pearl, Platinum holo you could think of, and then some. It's hard to process how many cards were here with prices as low as this. For some, the idea of spending 10 or 20 on just a holo is absurd, but for artist binder and Pokédex collectors, displays like this are the motherlode. Finding obscure cards like these is tough, and finding them in good condition is even harder, but everything here was practically mint, which made it tough to hold back. The wall had Delta Species cards and a few EX cards, but primarily reverse holos from HeartGold, SoulSilver, which are always tough to find. These Delta Species Latios and Latios seemed like solid pickups at that price. And next to that display, you had a few Prime cards and some choice picks from EX Team Rocket returns, many of which were drawn by the legend Corki Saito. It got even better on the shelves below. Literal rows of rares and commons from the advanced era, all in perfect condition, with no logic to the price differences. Usually it's because a card is first edition or unlimited, with unlimited technically being rarer, but these were all the same versions, just sometimes $10 or $20 cheaper. Practically every card here was less than 20 USD, even for popular Pokemon like Leafeon or Blastoise. The illustrations from this period of Pokemon cards are tough to beat. They strike a perfect balance between simple and detailed. No extravagant backgrounds and very traditional portrait depictions of each Pokemon. It's an era where artists like Kagemaru Himeno, Masakazu Fukuda, and Mitsuhiro Arita really thrived, where you could instantly tell which which artist had drawn your new favorite. I have massive regrets not picking up this Tyranitar by Fukuda at just $13, but I did open up my wallet here, finding cards like this Ampharos by Atsuko Nishida, that Blastoise by Kagemaru Himeno, and Politoed, my favorite Pokemon on this trip. These were all in perfect condition, with no issues at all. I still can't believe I picked them up as cheap as I did. There were some sealed items for sale, mostly recent booster boxes, which were all pretty cheap, so I wouldn't think twice buying any here. As well as some more exclusive items, like this Master Battle Set for $3,100, and this Near Intro Pack for $550, which I thought was a way better pickup. The old back cards here were limited to just the one shelf, which would make sense in a minute. What was really cool though was this Garapon machine. For 500 yen, you spin it and you get a prize based on the color of the ball that comes out. Mine was green, so I won this full art Bianca's Devotion, which was pretty cool. Given how deep the range of Gen 3 to Gen 4 era cards was here, it's going to be a 4.5 stars for variety. And with some of the best bargains you'll find in Japan, a perfect 5 stars for prices, giving Wonderliz 2 one of the best ratings on the trip. But why is it called Wonderliz 2? Is there a Wonderliz 1? Yes. Given how good Wonderliz 2 was, we figured the original was bound to match its energy. And being 2 blocks away meant it was a good opportunity to swing past a few other stores in the area, mainly the hobby stations. The first one is Hobby Station Osu Banshojitori. It's mostly filled with playables, so worth a quick visit at street level. The second, Hobby Station Osu Honten, is up an elevator and stocks way more interesting cards for collectors. Neither store let me film inside, but I did manage to find the last Southern Islands Post card featuring Mew for just 100 USD. The Mew is off center, but that's standard for these promos. Back en route to Wonderliz 1, you walk past Torika Plaza 55. No filming allowed here either, but worth noting while you're in the area. Until finally you reach the next stop, heading up a few flights of stairs to Wonderliz 1. While not as big as the previous store, size doesn't matter, it's what's on the inside that counts, and these guys were able to back it up. There was an okay variety of modern cards with a few PSA slabs mixed in amongst them all. Oh, and this full art Lily standing there menacingly, selling for a cool $20,000. At this point, I'd been to about 50 stores in Japan, so I was kind of getting sick of seeing modern. What I was after was the vintage selection, and while it wasn't as deep as Wonderliz 2, it was respectable. Most noticeably, there were way more old back cards for sale here. Not a massive range, but some pretty clean picks. But the e-reader cards were kind of random, like that McDonald's Larvitar promo between some regular holos. They had a few HeartGold SoulSilver cards with barely anything over $10, which is reason enough to visit stores like this these days. And some cards I hadn't seen for a while from the Shiny collection, or Legendary Treasures, that classic Piplup by Sui, and Gardevoir by Atsuko Nishida. They had some sealed boxes for sale, and the first time I'd seen 25th anniversary promo packs on the shelves. And this super old collection file from 1996, which in hindsight I probably should have bought. Wonderliz 1 is a bit of a weird store. No major standouts, but some potential to randomly have obscure cards that other stores wouldn't. So for that, I give it 3.5 stars for variety, and a solid 3.5 stars for prices. 17 card stores in one day, with a few more to come, and eventually you get pretty good at finding what you're chasing. In fact, you can probably summarize the whole card shop experience into this really cool video I get to share, because this vid is sponsored. So spare a second, take a quick look, and we'll get back to the rest of Nagoya. Day 2 is for the bigger stores, which take more time to get to and browse. We decided to visit Magi first, because by the time we were done, the local Mandarake would be open. Magi is in the Parko shopping mall, located on level 4. It can be a bit confusing to find, so just try to find the escalators and stick with them till you reach the floor it's on. While not as big as their store in Osaka, Magi's Nagoya location packed their fair share of variety. With a solid mix of modern, a few vintage cards, PSA slabs, and sealed product, you're bound to find a pickup if you visit here. They had a few black and white secret rares, but ultimately, modern cards dominated the cabinet space, very slightly extending into Sun and Moon territory. This Gardevoir from Shiny Treasure was the cheapest I'd seen all trip at just $40. I'm kind of numb to seeing art rare displays at this point, but they did have a cheap Magikarp here for just $12. Magi are known for selling high-end items, whether that's PSA slabs or sealed booster boxes. They had a fair few Sword and Shield sets on display, some of which have since reprinted, and others, like Blue Sky Stream, which are still crazy expensive. But if slabs are more of your thing, they had plenty, with some solid deals too. Slabs are still on sale in Japan, so it's always worth checking them out. There were a bunch of high tier slabs too, most carrying a price over the 1000 USD mark, whether it was a trainer or a Pokemon, with a bunch of early full art trainers from the XY era in the 4-digit range. If you're into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or One Piece, this Magi had aisles dedicated to them too, though I couldn't tell you how good the selection was. The yellow sticker cabinet was a pretty cool highlight. The cards on display here were marked down heavily, and if you bought more than 3 cards from this cabinet, you'd get a massive 30% off. I ended up buying this Machamp Holo from Expedition for just $10 after the discount. Overall, the vintage range was pretty limited, so for variety, it's going to be 3 stars, but the very fair prices earned this Magi 4 stars, so definitely give it a visit while you're here. With Magi covered, it was time to visit my personal favorite, Mandarake. But on the walk back, you'll see a store called Advantage. They've got solid prices and a very nice layout that I wish I could have shown you, so definitely worth checking out. And a really hidden store called Torika Limited. Now, this is a tough to find boutique store that focuses on high-end items and had crazy rare error cards. There was this Mew EX from Shiny Treasure with no texture, which almost looks fake, a Leafeon V special art also missing its texture, and an Espeon V special art with the same texture error, both from EV Heroes. By now, it was about 12 PM and Mandarake had finally opened. In the plight for vintage cards, if nobody got me, I know Mandarake got me. And while they did have a few modern cards, they were massively overshadowed by the vintage on display. The top shelf had a few premium cards, like the Masaki Golem and McDonald's Promo Umbreon. Cards were sorted by energy type, making browsing a little easier, and each card followed the same Mandarake ranking system, 1 to 10. With most cards here either a 7 or an 8. It can be tough to find bargains at Mandarake these days because most of their physical stuff is also listed online. So before a card even has a chance to hit shelves, somebody has probably sniped it. But that doesn't mean you won't find anything in here. With many cards priced between $5 to $30, it just comes down to what you're chasing. And Mandarake always has VS and web cards, though not a whole lot this time around. The Advance and Diamond Pearl range was pretty good, with a nice mix of holo rares and regular illustrations. You can't complain picking up Kagemaru Himeno holos like this Shaman for just $4, or this Dialga by Mitsuhiro Arita for just $10. As you can tell, the prices here were good, and I found cards marked as 7 to be near mint most of the time, so you can usually shop without worry. Though it does feel like there's an automatic markup on anything E-series, which makes what I'm collecting way harder. They had a few vending series cards like this Pikachu by Atsuko Nishida for just $25, and some really cheap promos camouflaged next to regular cards. I love checking out Mandarake because you'll never know what you'll find on the day. They had these Imakuni vending cards from Expansion Sheet 3 for just $20 each, and a Southern Islands binder, which was just a bit too bulky to bring home. Mandarake very rarely disappoints, so it's a solid 4 stars for variety and 4 stars for prices, a must visit. The next store we really wanted to visit was Clove, but on the way, we'd go past the C Labo, which ended up being the C Labo that broke my heart. Despite their huge range across every era, a definite 4.5 stars for variety, the prices were absurdly high. Maybe that's why they wouldn't let me film, earning a disappointing 1 star for prices. It's worth window shopping here for fun, but don't expect any deals. This brings us to one of my favorite branches in Japan, Clove Base Osu. The second you enter, you'll notice that the cabinets are primarily stocked with modern, compared to the vintage library in their Osaka store. You had your standard shelf with special arts from the last 5 years, and a section dedicated entirely to Evolutions cards from different sets. But you can buy all of these cheaper online, so it's a skip there. Naturally, they had a bunch of full art trainer cards, all priced around market at the time. The Scarlet and Violet cards have dropped considerably since, but the Sun and Moon and Sword Shield cards are mostly holding onto their 2023 highs. Though nearly 700 USD for a Shield Mani is ludicrous. Gotta shoot your shot, right? One thing Clove gets absolutely right is their setup. The way cards are displayed is sleek, so even if everything is expensive, at the least you got something nice to look at. There were a few empty shelves though, and it was hard to tell if other card games were starting to take over. That meant no vintage on display. So I asked the employee where they were hiding it all, and they brought out a bunch of boxes for us to sift through. I ended up walking out with some beautiful Diamond Pearl Platinum cards. Luxio from Rising Rivals for $3, Electivire from Secret Wonders for $2, and this Magmortar for $4, all by Corki Saito. Plus this Dialga by Mitsuhiro Arita for $7, and a bunch of Diamond Pearl cards for another video. All those years studying Japanese finally paid off, so I'm gonna give Clove 3.5 stars for variety and 3.5 stars for prices. Maybe 4 if you know who to ask. On the way to our final destination, you'll pass 2 tiny stores. Poker Top, which had mostly playables, and Full Ahead, again primarily stock and playables. Until at last, we reached a store that took us way too long to find at street level, but after a few flights of stairs ended up being well worth it. Rivaled only by Torika Camp, Dice Roll is one of the coolest stores in Nagoya and an absolute must visit. With an incredible range of cards starting at Vending and Old Backs, Neo through to E-Series, ADV, Diamond Pearl, a sprinkle of black and white, it's difficult to imagine anybody walking in here and not buying something for their collection. The walls are covered in old school TCG posters spanning as far back as VS and Neo, with some absolute relics of Pokemon card history I didn't even film. While I did take some photos, it's the kind of stuff you gotta see for yourself. The old back cards here run deep, with plenty from Gen 1 and Gen 2. There was a full set of the Southern Islands cards for $110, and a row full of cards banned for being too creepy or lost in translation. The bottom shelves of this cabinet house plenty of old back promo cards too, with a few that are drawn by Tomokazu Komiya becoming very difficult to find. They didn't have many E-Series cards, and most of the holos were on the more expensive end for Pokemon like Mew or Blastoise. This is a banger card though. And just the lone web series card, this Articuno by Naoya Kimura. These Gen 2 Evos were actually really cool. They're Japan exclusive promos, part of the Gold Silver Course set from the Starter Triple Get campaign. If you didn't know, Japanese promo cards can have some really long names. Dice Roll has plenty of ADV era cards too, and while the holos and rares were pretty sparse, some of them were crazy cheap at around the $20 to $30 mark. But outside of the big hitters, there were a ton of regular artworks on display, all around the $2 to $5 range. And this is only what they were showing. It got a whole lot better the longer we stayed in here. Heading into some HeartGold and SoulSilver, and I'd say this was the biggest display of cards from that era I'd seen in Nagoya so far. You had your Evolutions, because of course you have your Evolutions grouped together. A few Prime cards, but not a huge amount. And then at the very bottom, a few Diamond and Pearl cards. A couple of LVX cards, but no major standouts, though I do love seeing this Gardevoir wherever I go. The black and white and XY cards they had were actually a bit obscure looking back at it. There was a huge amount of concept pack cards here, which are just a fraction of the price of a sealed booster box of Pokekune, and some legendary collection cards mixed with some Rayquaza promos, plus a few regular illustrations, my favorite being this Meowth by Kirasaki. And of course there were some modern cards for sale, but they were a bit of an afterthought compared to the vintage on display. A few Sun and Moon cards with barely any special arts, instead traded in for gold items and those full art super rares. They did have some gym promos, primarily for the Evolution, so that was cool. They even had a cabinet filled with English cards, which is something you just don't see very often in Japan. There were some nice PSA slabs for sale, and even though it was nothing I was personally interested in, they're always fun to look at. And this beautifully unique collection of sealed items, including a Rocket gift pack, a Legends booster pack, and a quick starter gift set, which has a ton of Japan exclusive illustrations inside. Dice Roll had just about everything, right up there with Torika Camp, earning it 5 stars for variety and 5 stars for prices. Mainly because when I asked if they had any bulk, the owner brought out boxes upon boxes of it. I picked up so many commons and uncommons for between $1 and $5. It was the single biggest boost to my artist collections ever. A truly life-changing moment, and a reminder as to why I love this so much. Nagoya had some pretty amazing card stores, but there's still so much more to explore across Japan. So make sure to subscribe for the next parts of this series, or if you're after more now, check out my deep dive into Osaka. Till then, thank you so much for watching. Peace out.